Hello everyone, welcome to Daily English Pro, your place to improve English every single day. Stay focused, listen carefully, and try to repeat after what you hear. Let's get started.
Hello, today's podcast topic name is English for Difficult Conversations, How to Stay Calm, Clear, and Respectful.
It's undeniably a crucial topic, and I'm really looking forward to unpacking this with you today.
Yeah, me too. So I want to start by having you picture this. You're sitting in this really sleek, glass-walled meeting room, right? Like downtown Toronto.
Oh, I know the exact vibe.
Right. The fluorescent lights are just humming faintly overhead. The coffee in your mug has gone completely cold. And the colleague sitting directly across from you has just seamlessly and effortlessly taken credit for your idea. Again.
Ugh, that is just a deeply visceral, terrible feeling. I mean, even just hearing you describe that scenario, you can feel the tension building in the room.
Right, it's awful. Your heart starts pounding against your ribs. Your palms are suddenly sweating. You can feel this hot, prickly heat rising up the back of your neck.
The classic fight or flight response.
Exactly. And, in your core, that you need to say something right then and there to defend your work. You have to draw a boundary. But every single sentence that starts forming in your mind just feels wrong.
Right, like you're paralyzed.
Yes. One option sounds, way too aggressive, like you're starting a screaming match right there in the boardroom. But then another option sounds entirely too weak, like you're just apologizing for existing.
So, what do you end up doing?
You do nothing.
Yeah.
You just sit there. You smile that tight, polite little smile. You nod along. And then later that night, you're staring at your bedroom ceiling at 2 a.m., just replaying the entire scene on a loop in your head.
Oh, yeah. Coming up with all those absolutely brilliant cutting things you should have said.
Exactly, which is a remarkably universal human experience, I think.
It is. But we really need to acknowledge that it carries a very specific, much heavier weight when you are operating in a second language.
Absolutely. Which really brings us to the core mission of today's deep dive. We are exploring this massive, honestly, largely hidden barrier in the professional world.
It's like an invisible wall.
It really is an invisible wall standing between you and genuine belonging in your workplace. Not to mention, your overall professional success and your mental well-being. We are talking about mastering the unwritten, highly complex cultural scripts of workplace conflict.
Yeah, because here's the unspoken reality that so many people face. You can have flawless English grammar.
Right.
You can have this incredible dictionary level vocabulary. You can even have near native pronunciation. But if you cannot navigate these difficult, tense conversations with cultural awareness, you will perpetually feel like an outsider looking in.
That is undeniably the case. And I imagine it's incredibly frustrating for so many professionals.
Oh, it's beyond frustrating. Yeah. Because standard language courses, the ones you spend years and, thousands of dollars on to achieve perfect syntax, they completely ignore the emotional and cultural mechanics of disagreement.
Wait, really? They don't cover conflict at all?
Not in any real practical way. I mean, they teach you how to agree with a business proposal. They teach you how to present quarterly data on a graph.
Right, polite office stuff.
Yeah. They teach you how to ask for directions to the train station. But they fundamentally do not teach you how to respectfully and firmly push back when a colleague undermines you in front of your manager.
Wow. Yeah, that's a huge gap.
It is. Navigating those high-stakes, emotionally charged moments calmly, that is the ultimate hallmark of true fluency. It's the vast difference between just knowing the vocabulary words and knowing how those words actually land in the room, energetically and culturally.
It's kind of like handing someone the keys to a high-performance sports car, but then dropping them in the middle of a sprawling foreign city where they don't know the local traffic laws.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Thanks. Like the grammar, your vocabulary, that's the engine of the car. And it runs beautifully. You know how to shift gears. But the culture, the unspoken expectations of how to navigate tension, those are the local rules of exactly who has the right of way. If you don't know those rules, you're still going to crash, no matter how beautiful the car is.
That is a spot-on comparison. I mean, you can be driving perfectly straight, but if you're on the wrong side of the road for that specific country, it's just going to end in a disaster.
Let's talk about this illusion of fluency, because I think this is where the cost of silence really starts to compound over a career. There's this massive, just cavernous gap between knowing English as an academic subject and knowing workplace English as a survival tool.
It's huge.
Yeah. We've all been sold this myth that grammatical perfection equals effective communication. Right. But the moment tension enters the room, the second you have to say refuse a request from your boss or give negative feedback to a sensitive peer, the rules of the language shift entirely.
They shift completely. I mean, think about your native language for a second. You have these deeply ingrained, almost biological instincts for navigating tension.
No, you don't even think about it.
Exactly. Without even consciously thinking about it, you know exactly how direct you can be before someone gets offended. You know how to unconsciously modulate the pitch of your voice, your body language.
And you just know which specific cultural phrases will smooth things over or draw a firm boundary.
Precisely. I mean, specifically. But in English, and especially across the highly varied corporate environments in the US, the UK, Australia, and Canada, those exact native instincts will often completely mislead you.
Wait, really? They actually mislead you?
Oh, yeah. In fact, relying on the instincts from your mother tongue might actually backfire and make the situation significantly worse.
Wow. Okay, so we see these high-stakes misalignments happen constantly then. We're talking about brilliant, incredibly talented professionals who hit a glass ceiling or just outright fail in their roles.
And it's not because they lack technical skills.
Right. Not because they aren't smart enough, but simply because their underlying communication style doesn't map onto the local culture. Let's look at a few examples. Think about this one senior professional who moved to London. They kept getting passed over for a promotion simply because they delivered feedback too bluntly.
Yeah, that's a classic one in the UK.
Right. To them, they were being honest, efficient, and transparent. But their British colleagues felt profoundly uncomfortable. They perceived that communication style as an aggressive, almost hostile confrontation.
And the tragedy there is that the professional in London had absolutely no idea why people were pulling away from them.
That's heartbreaking.
It really is. Or consider a highly skilled immigrant working in tech in Seattle. They struggled for years to advocate for themselves because their language was overly formal, highly deferential, and just apologetic.
Because in their home culture, utilizing that level of deference to a manager was the ultimate sign of respect.
Exactly. It meant they were a true professional. But to their American managers, they just sounded uncertain. They sounded like they lacked confidence in their own ideas.
Oh, so they were probably deemed like not quite ready for a leadership track.
You nailed it. That's exactly what happened.
It definitely goes the other way too, right? Where the local culture is much flatter than the learner expects.
Oh, absolutely.
There's the story of a brilliant structural engineer who relocated to Melbourne, Australia. She had the technical English down completely. She could write flawless engineering reports.
But the office culture was a shock.
Completely. She eventually quit her job because she just couldn't handle the constant low-level feeling of panic when her Australian colleagues casually and bluntly challenged her ideas in open meetings.
Oh, right. The Australian egalitarian approach.
Yeah. She didn't know how to respectfully push back in that specific flat context. She didn't know how to parry the remarks, so she just absorbed all that stress internally until her nervous system gave out and she had to leave.
Which is just so sad. And it brings us to Priya's story, which I think beautifully and painfully illustrates the true cost of this dynamic.
Okay, tell us about Priya.
So Priya is a senior software developer from India who relocated to Vancouver. By every academic metric, her English is flawless. Technically, she's in the top 1% of her field. But culturally, in the office environment, she was utterly paralyzed. We need to look at what was actually happening in her day-to-day.
What was going on?
Well, when her manager gave her frustratingly vague instructions for a software deployment and then unfairly criticized her for missing the mark, what did she do? She didn't say, "I need more clarity."
Oh, let me guess. She just apologized.
She apologized profusely. She took all the blame and then worked 70-hour weeks to fix it.
Oh, man. And it wasn't just with her manager, was it?
No, not at all. When a more junior teammate repeatedly interrupted her and spoke over her during technical planning meetings, she just stayed perfectly silent. She let them take the floor.
That is so frustrating. And didn't she get handed extra administrative projects too? Stuff that was completely outside her job description as a senior developer.
She did. And she accepted them with a strained smile, totally worried that saying no would label her as not a team player. And here is the absolutely crucial point we need to understand about Priya. Her avoidance of these conflicts was not a lack of internal courage. She wasn't a weak person at all.
Right.
It was entirely a lack of linguistic confidence. She simply did not possess the specific conversational tools to navigate those interactions in a way that felt culturally appropriate and professionally safe to her.
She didn't want to sound rude, she didn't want to seem combative, so she chose the silence.
Exactly. And she paid the ultimate price in deep exhaustion, deep resentment, and eventually total burnout.
Okay, I hear that. But I want to stop right here and really push back on this dynamic for a second.
Go for it.
Because as we talk about Priya and the engineer in Melbourne and the professional in Seattle, it feels incredibly one-sided. I mean, is it really fair that the burden is entirely 100% on the non-native speaker to adapt?
That's a very fair question.
Like, we talk endlessly about diversity and inclusion. Shouldn't modern workplaces be more accommodating? If someone is technically brilliant, shouldn't a company meet them halfway instead of demanding they perfectly master these incredibly subtle Western corporate scripts? Aren't we just enforcing a corporate monoculture?
That is a phenomenal point, and it's an incredibly valid pushback. Philosophically, in a perfect world, yes, inclusive workplaces absolutely should meet people in the middle.
Right. If Priya is doing brilliant work, her managers should realize she communicates deference differently.
Undeniably. Leadership and HR departments should be actively trained to recognize and value different global communication styles, rather than penalizing someone for not sounding like a local.
So why are we putting the onus on the learner today?
Because here is the pragmatic, sometimes uncomfortable reality we have to operate in right now. Waiting for corporate culture to catch up is a remarkably slow, painful, and generational process.
I mean, yeah, corporate moves at a glacial pace.
Exactly. You might wait a decade for your company's management training to finally recognize your specific communication style. So equipping yourself with these linguistic tools isn't about surrendering your cultural identity.
What is it about, then?
It's about empowering yourself immediately. It gives you the personal agency to protect your own boundaries today, to safeguard your mental health this afternoon, and to advocate for your career trajectory in your very next meeting.
Wow. Okay, so you learn the rules of their terrain, not to become them, but to protect yourself while you navigate it.
You put on the armor so you don't get bruised while you're walking through their house.
That makes a lot of sense. It's a survival tool, not a personality change. So let's dive into what's actually happening under the hood when we need that armor. I want to get into the neurology of conflict in a second language.
Oh, the brain science here is utterly fascinating.
It really is. We've established why these conversations are necessary, but the physical and mental barriers making them so difficult are just staggering.
They are massive. We have to talk about the concept of cognitive overload.
Okay, what does that look like in the brain?
Well, navigating interpersonal tension is inherently stressful for any human being, even in their native mother tongue. When someone challenges you, your amygdala fires, your heart rate elevates, cortisol floods your system, and your biological fight-or-flight response kicks in.
Right. Standard stress response.
Now, I want you to imagine trying to manage that intense biological stress response while simultaneously performing complex, real-time linguistic translation, second-guessing your vocabulary choices, and desperately trying to evaluate the cultural appropriateness of the sentence you're about to say.
Oh man, the cognitive load doesn't just double, it multiplies exponentially.
Spot on. Your brain's processing capacity is completely maxed out.
And native speakers have a frankly unfair advantage here, don't they? Because they rely on automatic language production during a conflict.
Absolutely.
Like when an American is arguing in English, they don't have to consciously think about assembling the words. The words just materialize automatically.
Accurately. The neural pathways for their native language are entirely automated. Because they aren't spending brain power on syntax or vocabulary retrieval, they can dedicate 100% of their prefrontal cortex, their executive functioning, to the actual strategy of the argument.
Right, they're reading the other person's body language. They're anticipating the next counter-argument.
Exactly. Language learners simply do not have that luxury. Their brain is working double time just to construct the very basic architecture of the sentences. It's like trying to play a high-stakes game of chess while simultaneously having to carve the chess pieces out of wood.
That chess analogy is perfect. Let's look at Sarah, for example. She's a senior marketing manager from Germany, currently working in Austin, Texas.
Okay, the Texas office.
Yeah, and she just found out, casually in an email, that her major Q3 budget proposal was rejected by the director without anyone even consulting her. She put 3 weeks of late nights into this proposal.
I'd be furious.
Oh, totally. Now, if this were happened back in Germany, she knows the exact script. The German workplace culture generally values highly direct, factual, unvarnished communication.
Right. She knows exactly how to walk into an office and express professional frustration in German.
But in English, standing outside her director's office in Texas, she is drowning in choices. She's caught in that cognitive bottleneck. She's standing there thinking, is the word disappointed better than concerned?
If I walk in and say, you should have talked to me first, is that way too aggressive for an American office?
Exactly. Will they think I'm being insubordinate?
And while she is trapped in that frantic internal debate running through a thesaurus in her head, the window of opportunity to speak up is rapidly closing. The emotional activation combined with the linguistic calculation is entirely exhausting.
So what does she do?
She'll likely just nod, say, okay, thanks for letting me know, and walk away furious. That dynamic is specifically why the first major strategy we need to introduce is what I call the emotional buffer.
Okay, I struggle a little bit with this concept of the emotional buffer. Let's break it down.
Sure, what's the hang-up?
Because my immediate thought is, if I'm in a high-pressure meeting and someone insults my project or challenges my data, and I just pause, sit there in silence and say, let me think about that. Don't I look weak?
I completely understand that fear.
Doesn't it look like I'm capitulating or that I'm totally out of my depth?
That is the most common fear, but the reality of how it's perceived is entirely the opposite if it's executed correctly. We aren't talking about a panicked deer-in-the-headlights freeze.
Okay.
We are talking about granting yourself explicit permission to deliberately slow the pacing of the conversation down. When someone triggers your fight or flight response, your instinct is either to react immediately and aggressively or to shrink into yourself and freeze.
Right.
You need to actively train yourself to use buffer phrases. These are spoken phrases designed to buy your brain processing time without making you look lost.
So it's about holding the floor. You're verbally claiming the space so they can't keep talking, but you aren't committing to an argument yet.
Absolutely. You might say, that's an interesting perspective. Let me think about how that impacts the timeline for a moment.
Oh, that sounds very professional.
Or, I want to make sure I respond to this thoughtfully. Give me just a second. Or even just maintaining strong eye contact, nodding slowly, and saying a simple, firm, okay, followed by a deliberate 3-second pause.
And that works.
Yes. These phrases send a strong signal to the other person that you are fully engaged, you have heard them, and you're evaluating their words. You look measured and in control.
But internally.
Internally, biologically, those phrases give your brain the 3 or 4 precious seconds it desperately needs to catch up. It lets the cortisol spike settle, processes the emotional hit, and systematically selects the right English vocabulary from your mental archives.
It's an artificial speed bump. I love that. It takes the enormous pressure off you to have a lightning-fast Aaron Sorkin-style comeback right out of the gate. And that leads beautifully into the second strategy, which is pre-scripting anchors. This is what Sarah eventually learned to do before she went in to talk to her director in Austin about that rejected budget.
Right. And we must be incredibly careful to clarify what pre-scripting actually means here. You absolutely do not sit at your desk and write out a full 3-page script for the entire conversation.
Oh, definitely not. Because if you do that, trying to predict what they will say and what you will say back, the second the other person goes off script, and they will go off script within the first 5 seconds, your brain will completely short circuit.
You'll freeze because you don't have a pre-written line for their unexpected response.
Right. So what do you do instead?
You just script your anchors. You script one opening sentence to get you into the room, and you script one core message. For Sarah, her opener was simply, I'd like to take a few minutes to talk about the budget decision and how we can align better in the future.
Okay, simple, professional.
That gets her through the door without stumbling over her words. And her core message, her anchor was, I need to be consulted before final decisions are made about projects I am personally leading.
And that's it. That's all she memorizes.
That's all she memorizes.
I love the idea of calling them anchors.
Yeah.
They're like her lighthouses in the middle of a storm. If the conversation with her director gets heated, or she gets flustered, or the director tries to change the subject, or she suddenly forgets her advanced vocabulary, she doesn't have to panic.
No panic required.
She just takes a breath, uses an emotional buffer, and navigates right back to that core message. I understand budgets are tight, but I need to be consulted before final decisions are made. It fundamentally grounds her.
It creates immense psychological safety. Now, the third strategy, and this is arguably the biggest minefield for non-native speakers, is emotional moderation.
Oh, this is a tricky one.
It is. The acceptable register of emotion in corporate environments, particularly in the US, the UK, Australia, and Canada, is incredibly specific and often quite narrow.
It really is narrow. In many global cultures, like parts of Southern Europe, Latin America, or the Middle East, expressing intense, visible emotion at work during a disagreement is completely expected.
Right. It shows you are invested.
Exactly. It shows you care passionately about the outcome. But in the Anglo-corporate environments we are discussing today, expressing raw anger is treated like a taboo. Saying, "I am very angry about this," is often viewed not as passion, but as a severe loss of emotional control. It can be a career killer.
Undeniably. In these cultures, the moment you display raw anger, the other person stops listening to the logic of your argument and only focuses on the fact that you are acting unprofessionally.
So what's the strategy?
You have to translate your intense emotion into a highly specific, moderated, professional register. You don't suppress the fact that you're upset, but you change the packaging.
Okay, give me an example.
Instead of saying, "I'm very angry that you did this," you say, "I am genuinely concerned about how this was handled," or "I am honestly quite frustrated by this process."
I want the listener to really hear the difference there. Notice how genuinely concerned and honestly quite frustrated get the exact same underlying message across. You are clearly stating that a boundary has been crossed, you are unhappy, and something needs to change.
Right.
But they do so with a veneer of professional appropriateness. They signal that you are experiencing negative emotion, but crucially, you remain in complete control of your rational faculties. You aren't yelling. You aren't out of control.
And that specific moderation commands immense respect in Western workplaces. It proves you can handle high-pressure situations without becoming a liability.
Okay, so we've established the internal groundwork, we've got our emotional buffers, we know how to use our anchors, and we've calibrated our emotional register.
But now we hit the geographical reality.
Yes. We need to know which cultural script to deploy based on where we are actually working, because there is absolutely no such thing as a single, monolithic English culture.
Not even close. The English language is a vehicle, but the cultures driving it are wildly different. What is considered highly polite and appropriate in one English-speaking city might be considered deeply passive-aggressive or rude or bizarrely weak in another.
Let's run a real-time experiment for the listener.
I love experiments. Let's do it.
We are going to use a single common scenario. A colleague misses a crucial deadline. They haven't sent you the data you need, and it is actively holding up your work. Let's look at how 4 different major regions handle this exact same tension. Let's start in the United States.
Okay.
The cultural script here is essentially directness wrapped in positivity.
Yes. In American corporate culture, particularly if you are operating in fast-paced hubs like Chicago, New York, or Silicon Valley, the underlying expectation is that you address the roadblock relatively directly, but you are required to immediately wrap that directness in forward-looking, optimistic, action-oriented language.
So it's all about moving forward.
Exactly. The culture values efficiency and forward momentum above almost everything else. So, you name the issue, you state the business impact, and you pivot instantly to collaborative solutions. You do not dwell on the past, and you certainly do not use excessive apologies.
So an American addressing that missed deadline might sound like this. Hey, John, I noticed the Q3 report didn't come through yesterday, and I'm a bit stuck on my end without it. Can we figure out a timeline today that works for both of us?
Let's deconstruct the architecture of that response because it's brilliant in its efficiency.
Let's hear it.
I noticed the report didn't come through. That is the clear, objective naming of the problem without aggressively saying you failed to send it. Then I'm a bit stuck on my end. That clearly states the impact without whining.
Right. And finally, can we figure out a timeline that works for both of us? That is the immediate optimistic pivot to a collaborative solution. It assumes good intent.
Spot on. If you use too many apologies in an American office, if you say, "I'm so sorry to bother you about this," an American colleague might actually find it annoying or inefficient. They just want to identify the roadblock and remove it so everyone can get back to work.
Okay, now contrast that with the United Kingdom, because this is an entirely different universe. The script here is sophisticated indirectness. It's almost the complete opposite of the American approach.
Entirely. In a traditional corporate environment in London, Edinburgh, or Manchester, indirectness is absolutely not a sign of weakness or inefficiency. It is a highly sophisticated, deeply ingrained communication strategy linked to historical class structures and social harmony.
Oh, fascinating.
The British rely heavily on understatement, constant hedging, and phrasing criticisms as gentle questions rather than declarative statements. The primary social goal is to raise the concern while giving the offender maximum face-saving room to retreat without feeling publicly humiliated.
So that exact same missed deadline in a British office sounds like this. Hi, John. I'm terribly sorry to bother you, but I was just wondering if there might have been any issue with the Q3 report. It's just that I'm rather depending on it for my presentation, and I wasn't entirely sure if perhaps it had got lost in the post or held up in the system somewhere.
Which is a linguistic masterpiece of deflection.
It's wild. To an American ear or to someone from Germany or the Netherlands, that sounds wildly insecure and incredibly confusing. The American is thinking, why on earth is the person who is waiting for the late report apologizing to the person who messed up? And why are they pretending it got lost in the mail?
Right. The foreigner thinks the British person is terrified of conflict, but to a Brit, that response is highly calibrated respect. You are offering them a polite, fictional way out. Maybe the email server crashed, even though both of you know perfectly well they just forgot to do their job.
So it preserves the relationship.
Exactly. It allows the offender to say, oh goodness, yes, system error, I'll send it right now, which corrects the mistake without anyone having to be directly accused of incompetence. It preserves the social fabric of the office.
The delicate chance. Now let's fly down to the Southern Hemisphere, Australia.
Ah, yes.
The script here is egalitarian directness. Places like Sydney, Brisbane, or Melbourne have workplace hierarchies. They're remarkably flat compared to the UK or even the US.
Very flat. The culture has a strong historical aversion to anyone acting superior to anyone else. It's the famous tall poppy syndrome. They value absolute straight talk delivered without any pretension, but it must almost always be softened with casual good humor and a sense of mateship.
So in a Sydney office, you wouldn't use British hedging or American corporate speak. You'd likely hear something like, mate, still waiting on that Q3 report. Any chance you can shoot it over today? I'm properly stuck without it.
Exactly. It completely cuts through the elaborate, face-saving politeness of the UK, and it drops the overly enthusiastic corporate solutions of the US, but it maintains respect through casual, egalitarian friendliness.
So the implicit message behind mate and the casual tone is what?
It's basically saying, we are equals, nobody is better than anybody else, you messed up, I need the thing, let's just sort this out without making a big dramatic deal of it.
Which is wonderfully refreshing, but also terrifying if you aren't used to it. And then we come back to Canada. The script here is what we might call multicultural, gentle directness.
Yes, especially when you are operating in global hubs like Toronto or Vancouver, you are dealing with cities that essentially try to blend British-style politeness with American-style directness, filtered through a massive immigrant population.
Canadians are hyper-aware of multicultural sensitivity, right?
Very much so. The national identity is heavily invested in being accommodating and polite. They are exceptionally careful not to cause offense. So they will be significantly more direct than the British. They won't pretend the email got lost in the mail. But they are much gentler than the Americans, frequently going out of their way to explicitly acknowledge the other person's constraints before making a demand.
So a Canadian manager in Ottawa might address the late report by saying, "Hi, John, I know you've been really busy with the merger this week, and I honestly don't want to add pressure to your plate, but I'm in a bit of a bind without that Q3 report. Would it be possible to get it by end of day? I'm totally happy to work around your schedule if that helps."
Notice the immense amount of empathy front-loaded into that request. I know you've been busy. What is so utterly fascinating here is how the very definition of the word rude completely shifts across these geographical borders.
Right. Adapting your language to these specific environments isn't just a fun trick to sound more like a local.
No, it is a critical defense mechanism to prevent catastrophic misunderstandings. Think about the cross-contamination. If you use the casual Australian, mate, where's the report approach in a highly formal, traditional London banking firm, you might cause serious professional offense. You'll be seen as brazen and disrespectful.
Oh, absolutely.
On the flip side, if you use the British, I'm terribly sorry, but perhaps it got lost, hedging in a fast-paced, cutthroat New York startup, you might be ignored entirely because they simply don't register that you are making an urgent demand.
You have to know the rules of the specific road you were driving on. Which brings us to a really, really dangerous trap for non-native speakers, especially when they are trying to navigate polite cultures like the UK or Canada. It's something you call the clarity paradox.
Yes.
Because we know these specific cultures value politeness, language learners often sacrifice their own clarity for the sake of trying to be nice.
This is perhaps the single most common and most damaging pitfall I see in my work. The intention of the learner is entirely good. You want to be polite, you want to respect the local culture, you don't want to make enemies, but the execution goes horribly wrong, resulting in a complete loss of your actual message.
We see this clearly with David's story. Let's look at David. He's a senior accountant from Poland, currently working in a mid-sized firm in Manchester, England.
Okay, the UK again.
Right. As a senior, he needs to tell a junior colleague that her constant, habitual lateness to their morning client meetings is causing huge operational problems.
A tough conversation for anyone.
David knows the British value in directness, so he tries his hardest to be incredibly polite. He walks up to her desk, and what comes out of his mouth is this massive, meandering, 5-minute paragraph full of apologies and qualifiers.
Oh.
He says something like, "Listen, I really don't want to seem like I'm criticizing you at all. And I know you have a very long commute, and you're incredibly busy. And obviously it's not a huge deal, but sometimes, well, not always, of course, but sometimes you arrive a bit late to the morning catch-up. And I was just wondering whether perhaps there might be a way we could maybe try to think about adjusting the schedule."
Wow.
By the time he finally stops talking, the junior colleague just smiles, says, "Sure, I'll try," and completely dismisses the interaction. She doesn't even realize she's just been formally reprimanded by a superior.
It's a complete failure of communication, and here is the crucial, counterintuitive insight that David needs to learn. Excessive, nervous hedging like that does not actually sound polite to a native speaker. It has the opposite effect.
Wait, really? How does it sound to them? I would think it just sounds super nice.
It sounds highly passive-aggressive, or it sounds manipulative, or at best, it simply sounds desperately uncertain.
Wait, manipulative? Why?
Because when a native English speaker hears that endless stream of apologies and qualifiers, I don't mean to criticize, but maybe, sometimes, perhaps, their brain naturally assumes you are hiding something. The listener is left thinking, what is this person actually trying to say to me? What is the hidden agenda here? Why won't they just give it to me straight? It breeds distrust.
So, if trying to be excessively nice makes you sound passive-aggressive, what is the solution? The solution to the clarity paradox is what you call respectful clarity.
Yes. Respectful clarity is the gold standard of workplace communication. It means you strip away the frantic apologies and you open with a calm, clear statement of purpose.
Okay.
You use I statements to describe the tangible impact the issue is having on you rather than making accusations about them. You actively invite collaboration. And critically, this is the most important part, you eliminate absolute trigger words from your vocabulary.
Trigger words like always, never, unfair, or unacceptable.
Absolutely. Those words are incredibly inflammatory. If David walks up and says, "You are always late and it is unacceptable," the junior colleague's brain immediately throws up a massive defensive wall.
She's no longer listening.
Right. She's just preparing her counterattack. She's thinking, I wasn't late last Tuesday. But if David uses respectful clarity, he says, "You've been 15 minutes late to our last 3 morning meetings. When that happens, I have to stall the clients," which makes the firm look unorganized. We need to find a way to ensure you are here at 9:0 a.m. sharp.
Wow, that's much better.
That is a factual, undeniable statement. It addresses the behavior without attacking her character, and it opens the door to a structural solution.
I want to transition into a specific tactic for achieving that respectful clarity, which is the superpower of genuine questions. Because sometimes you can't just make a statement. Sometimes you are dealing with someone who is inherently hostile or defensive.
Oh, certainly.
Let's look at Anita in Calgary. Anita is an HR director. She needs to tell her famously stubborn, highly defensive VP that a brand new company policy he designed is a terrible idea.
Yeah.
It violates labor laws and it will fail miserably. If she walks into his office and states, "This won't work," she's doomed.
Completely. Her VP's ego will immediately feel attacked, he'll dig his heels in, and he will force the policy through just to prove her wrong.
So Anita uses the tactic of strategic inquiry. Instead of making a declarative statement that triggers his ego, she asks highly targeted questions. She says, "I've been reviewing the new policy. I'd love to understand the core thinking behind it. What specific metrics are we hoping to improve? And have we considered how this new mandate will interact with our existing union contracts regarding overtime?"
Now, I can hear your listeners thinking right now, because this is the most common objection I get in my seminars. Isn't that just a manipulative psychological trick? If I know the policy is terrible and I'm just using questions to secretly back someone into a corner so they admit they are wrong, won't they see right through that? Won't they feel manipulated?
I completely agree with the listener here. That is exactly the pushback I was going to give you. When people do that to me, when they ask leading questions just to trap me, I find it infuriating. It feels so patronizing.
It absolutely is patronizing if it is a trap, but it is not a trap if they are genuine inquiries. That is the critical, fundamental distinction.
How do you make it genuine?
You are not asking rhetorical questions with a smirk on your face, waiting for them to stumble. You must approach it with genuine professional curiosity. You are earnestly inviting them to walk you through their logic, because there is always a chance you miss something.
Right, maybe you don't have all the context.
Exactly. But usually when you ask calmly, have we considered how this interacts with the union contracts? You are giving them the floor to explain it. And as they try to explain it out loud, the fatal flaws in their own plan usually reveal themselves organically to them. They stop mid-sentence and realize, oh wait, this actually contradicts Section 4 of the handbook.
So they defeat their own bad idea.
Yes, but without losing face, you have miraculously turned what would have been a bitter adversarial debate into a collaborative problem-solving session. You aren't sitting across the table attacking them. Metaphorically, you have moved to sit beside them, and you're both looking at the problem on the table together.
That shifts the entire energy of the room. I love that. But to execute these cultural scripts seamlessly, to use those strategic questions without sounding patronizing, to maintain respectful clarity under fire, you really need an upgraded linguistic toolkit.
You really do.
You need the specific, nuanced vocabulary that signals high emotional intelligence to a native speaker. We need to move way beyond basic business English.
Basic business English is functional, but it's sterile. It teaches you how to say, let's review the quarterly metrics, or please find attached the invoice. If you want to survive conflict, we need to dive into the vocabulary and the ecosystem of tension.
Ecosystem of tension, I like that.
These are the specific power phrases, the idioms, that native English speakers intuitively use to de-escalate anxiety and navigate incredibly tricky interpersonal dynamics.
Let's rapidly analyze a few of these because I want the listener to understand the psychology behind the words. Let's start with the phrase, to push back, or to draw a line.
These are fascinating because they are spatial metaphors. To push back on an idea or to draw the line is how you firmly assert a professional boundary without crossing over into personal aggression.
Right.
If a manager keeps dumping extra work on you and you say, I refuse to do this, you sound combative. But if you say, I need to push back on this new timeline as it compromises our quality, or I have to draw the line at working consecutive weekends, it sounds principled. It sounds firm, professional, and boundaried. It commands so much more respect than complaining or whining.
What about the phrases, give the benefit of the doubt, or hear someone out? Why are those so powerful?
These are your ultimate relationship preservation tools, rooted in a framework of fairness and justice. If a colleague makes a massive error and the whole team is angry, and you say, I know the data is wrong, but I wanted to hear him out before making a decision, or I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt on this mistake, you are signaling incredible maturity.
Yeah, that sounds so level-headed.
You are showing everyone in the room that you are a reasonable, measured leader who doesn't jump to malicious conclusions or execute people on the first offense. Using those phrases instantly lowers the emotional temperature of the entire office.
It shows you presume good intent. Then there are the collaborative terms. Phrases like clear the air or meet someone halfway.
Clear the air is an atmospheric metaphor. It implies that the current tension is like smog or smoke in the room, making it hard to breathe. If there has been lingering, awkward silence after a bad argument with a peer, walking up to them and saying, hey, can we grab a quick coffee? I'd really like to clear the air between us, is a wonderfully warm, proactive way to reset the relationship.
It acknowledges the awkwardness without assigning blame.
Spot on. And offering to meet someone halfway shows you aren't a stubborn dictator. You are willing to compromise. It is inherently solution-oriented.
And finally, we have risk management phrases. Telling someone you need to tread carefully, or that you want to nip it in the bud.
Nip it in the bud is a brilliant agricultural metaphor. It means to snip the bud off a weed before it can bloom and spread its seeds. It means stopping a small problem before it morphs into a massive crisis.
I use that one all the time.
It's great, right? If you tell your director, I noticed some minor tension between the two junior developers yesterday, so I'm going to pull them into a room and nip it in the bud. You are showing incredible leadership. You are demonstrating high situational awareness and proactive risk management.
Now, learning these specific terms, along with broader psychological concepts like identifying passive-aggressive behavior, knowing how to read the room, doing damage control after a bad meeting, or graciously recognizing a miscommunication. This isn't just about memorizing a list of idioms for a vocabulary test, is it? It's deeper than that.
Oh, it's vastly deeper. Learning this specific vocabulary is about adopting the actual conceptual framework that native English speakers use to categorize and understand human behavior.
Language shapes reality.
Exactly. When you can correctly identify a colleague's strange, unhelpful behavior as passive-aggressive, or when you can accurately tell your boss that you read the room during the client pitch and wisely decided to hold off on presenting the new pricing model, you are proving that you fundamentally get it.
You're speaking their psychological language.
You are demonstrating that you fully comprehend the subtle psychological and cultural currents flowing under the surface of the workplace. It is the ultimate proof of cultural fluency. You aren't just translating words anymore. You are translating human behavior.
Okay, we have covered a massive amount of ground here. We've explored the neuroscience of the linguistic bottleneck, the 4 major geographical cultural scripts, the paradox of clarity, and the deep psychology of tension vocabulary.
There's a lot to take in.
It is. But insight without action is useless. It is time for the action plan. We need to move the listener from passive consumption of this deep dive to active, real-world application in their daily lives.
This is where the real work begins. And before we give the steps, I think it's vital that we directly address the fear that accompanies this process.
The fear is so incredibly real. And it's multi-layered. There's a deep fear of sounding rude and burning a bridge. There's the profound insecurity about your accent, the fear that when you get stressed and agitated, your native accent becomes thicker and people will judge you or understand you less.
And frankly, there's the very real terror of retaliation if you push back against a manager in a culture you don't fully understand.
Yes. I want to validate all of that. Those fears are universally human. Everyone, even native speakers, feels them to some degree when facing conflict, but they are undeniably magnified 100 times for the non-native speaker.
However, I want to assure you with absolute certainty, the long-term cost of silent resentment is far, far worse.
It really is.
Continuously swallowing your frustration, letting colleagues steal your ideas, missing out on well-deserved promotions, and feeling like a perpetual, anxious outsider in your own office, that takes a much heavier, more destructive toll on your life, your health, and your career than the temporary acute discomfort of learning how to speak up.
You have to choose your heart. Being silent is hard. Learning to speak up is hard. Choose the hard that moves you forward. So how do we actually start rewiring our brains? Step 1. Memorize universal opening phrases.
You need to lock in your universal openers. I'm talking about phrases like, I'd like to talk about something that's been on my mind, or can we take a brief moment to discuss how that client meeting went?
Why are openers so important?
Having 3 or 4 of these securely memorized entirely removes the immense friction of starting the difficult conversation. When your anxiety spikes and your heart is pounding, you don't have to desperately invent a brilliant, nuanced opening line on the fly.
You just rely on the muscle memory.
Exactly. You just press play on the exact phrase you have practiced out loud 50 times in your bathroom mirror. It gets you in the door. Once you are talking, the momentum carries you forward.
Step 2 is my absolute favorite, the 5-minute post-conversation review. It's almost like cognitive behavioral therapy for language learning.
It is essentially exactly that. This needs to become a daily, nightly habit by a small, dedicated notebook. Every single time you have a tense interaction at work, even a minor one take, just 5 minutes later that evening to sit down and debrief yourself.
What should they be writing down?
Jot down what happened, what did they actually say, what did you say in response, what part of your response worked well, and most importantly, what do you wish you had phrased differently? You must do this with intense curiosity and zero self-judgment.
No beating yourself up.
Right. You are acting as an objective scientist observing your own linguistic patterns in the wild. Over time, this builds incredible, profound awareness of your default defense mechanisms, and it highlights the specific vocabulary gaps you need to fill before the next conflict.
And finally, step 3, low-stakes practice. You cannot read a book on negotiation and then wait for the biggest salary review of your career to test these new skills. You need training grounds.
Absolutely. You must practice in environments where the outcome doesn't matter. Practice correcting a barista at the coffee shop who got your order wrong. Do it calmly, clearly, and without apologizing for their mistake.
That's a great one. What else?
If someone interrupts you with a minor tangential point in a low-stakes team update, practice raising your hand slightly and saying, "Actually, John, could I just finish my thought before we move on?" Practice politely declining a small, unimportant volunteer request from the social committee.
So you start small.
These minor, everyday, low-stakes interactions are the gym where you build the muscle memory of polite pushback.
But we need to give the listener a reality check here. You aren't going to implement this action plan today and become a master, icy cool negotiator by next Tuesday.
No, you are not. And expecting overnight perfection is just setting yourself up for unnecessary heartbreak. In my experience working with thousands of professionals, it takes a solid 3 to 6 months of highly intentional, consistent practice to truly rewire your cultural instincts.
3 to 6 months, that's a real commitment.
It is. You are actively fighting against decades of deeply ingrained conditioning that taught you to either accommodate authority or avoid conflict entirely in a second language. Be gentle and patient with yourself. The neural pathways take real time to form.
So let's bring it all back to the core takeaway. Mastering how you handle these difficult, tense conversations isn't just some neat little communication hack to make your weekly meetings 5 minutes shorter.
No, it's so much bigger than that.
It is the ultimate key to professional liberation. It is the solid bridge that takes you from feeling like a perpetual outsider, constantly second-guessing your own worth, to becoming a confident, fully integrated, highly respected professional who commands the room.
It allows you to step out of the shadows and participate fully in your own life, your own projects, and your own career, rather than just observing it all anxiously from the sidelines.
I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to really mull over tonight. Think about the one specific, uncomfortable conversation you are actively avoiding at work right now.
Ooh, everyone has one.
You know exactly the one I'm talking about, the one making your stomach tie in knots. What if the discomfort of having that specific conversation isn't actually a roadblock? What if the discomfort is the hidden doorway?
I love that framing.
What if mastering the English to have that one conversation is the exact threshold you need to cross to secure the respect, the promotion, or the profound peace of mind you've been waiting for all year?
That is a deeply powerful perspective shift. The obstacle is the way.
If you found value in today's deep dive, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel.